Excellent. Hello, and everyone, welcome to our August breakfast. This is the first time we've actually done it through a virtual webinar software, so we're very, very excited to be trying this out and to be able to broadcast this not only through our normal channel, but also through Facebook as well. Today, we are very, very excited to welcome our guest who's tuning in from Silicon Valley, California, which is very early in the morning. So hopefully you'll say hi to her when we do get to that point. But to begin with, of course, I would like to thank our core sponsors for doing what they do. If it wasn't for our core sponsors, we wouldn't be able to provide the programming that we do provide, as well as our innovation partners. Our innovation partners provide money, but obviously they also provide us with access to resources and really access to a lot of talent. And they really help our clients go from the very beginning on to expanding from there. And I think many of you have seen them on different virtual workshops. And of course, we'll continue doing virtual workshops as well. The team of the innovation cluster is small, but we have very quickly grown in the last little bit by adding 2 more individuals to the company. So we just recently brought on Shay, who is the administrative assistant, and Kate, who's our marketing coordinator. And I do want to do a quick shout out to our staff, to the team. I mean, the team works tirelessly to continue supporting our innovation partners and our innovation clients, really to build their companies, and especially during the pandemic, to really make sure that they continue on point, they continue to pivot if necessary, and quite frankly, to become larger companies in our area, which hopefully will continue creating jobs and really building an economy of innovation, which I think all of us agree during this pandemic. There's been lots of traditional businesses have been seriously impacted in our region, and these types of companies that we're supporting today could very well be the next large employers that of course will take our economy and our community to the next level. And last but not least, I just want to do a shout out to our great board of directors. Of course, in the webinar version, I don't get to see everybody who's an attendee, so I know a number of them are on right now, but these board members are all volunteer. They're all pillars of their own communities, as well as part of our community, but their own different market segments and verticals that they belong to, and they contribute a lot to make our organization continue going forward. So just a quick shout out to all of them, and of course those of you that are logging on right now, I'd just like to do a personal thank you for being a great board and for really steering us in the right direction. Next, we're going to do a little spotlight for Rose Terry. So Rose has been championing a product and a new program basically called Women Breaking Barriers. It's something that Rose has really envisioned, I think really the last 3.5 years. Rose has been working on this kind of concept. We got some funding, and Rose has really kind of driven this to the next level. So I'm going to turn it over to Rose to just talk very quickly about Women Breaking Barriers.
Thank you, Mike, and hi everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful morning and that you were able to have some coffee this morning before tuning in, or maybe some tea if that's what you prefer. I am just tuning in quickly to chat with you a little bit about a new program that we just launched with the support of Ontario Trillium Foundation. And just so that everyone knows, this is our first ever virtual accelerator, and it's called Women Breaking Barriers. And it's an acceleration program for bold bosses in science, technology, engineering, math, and social innovation. So we're so excited to launch the applications for this. So applications are now open. And for anyone that hasn't heard about this program yet, this program will intake 2 cohorts of 10 women, ages 18 or older, through a 6-month per cohort program of fast-track programming and mentorship to reduce a lot of the barriers that female founders typically will face to grow and scale their business. So these women will also have the opportunity to pitch to the Peterborough Region Angel Network at the end of the 6-month program, which is awesome. So please help us spread the word if you may not fit into this program. The eligibility requirements can be found on the website. However, we also are holding a free info session next week, so you can head to our website, innovationcluster.ca/breakbarriers, to learn more about that program. And of course, this is open to everyone in Peterborough and the Kawarthas, including, but not limited to, Haliburton, Curve Lake, Millbrook, Lindsay, and more. And I will pass it back to Mike, and I hope you all enjoy the breakfast this morning. I know it's going to be a great one.
Great, thanks a lot, Rose. And once again, this is something that Rose has been putting together for a while. So I know it's hard to do a virtual clap, but I think we're all clapping because I know, Rose, you put a lot of time and energy into building this up. So thank you very much on behalf of the cluster, our clients, and hopefully our new female entrepreneurs that are going to come through the program and be the next large employers in our region. So thank you. Like all of our other Power Breakfasts this year, Peterborough and the Kawarthas Economic has sponsored this virtual breakfast. It's been very, very important as part of our partnership. I know PKAD has been working very tirelessly to make sure that the economy of Peterborough and County is coming back on track. Rhonda spends a lot of time really maneuvering through the different levels of government, different levels of businesses. There's lots and lots of needs and requests, and Rhonda's been doing an amazing job of trying to consolidate that and kind of bring that together and really make it work. So I just want to introduce Rhonda Keenan, the President and CEO of Peterborough Economic Development, just for a few seconds to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here as a sponsor for the Innovation Cluster's Power Breakfast. I think this is the third virtual breakfast since COVID hit, and I think our sponsorship was originally intended to cover the cost of breakfast, so I'm really sorry that you have to make your own. I really hope that one day we get to be back in and have those catered breakfast again, and I never really realized what a luxury that was actually going to be. But I'm still grateful that the Innovation Cluster gives us a few minutes to talk about economic development in Peterborough and the Kawarthas. We are the lead regional economic development agency for the city and the county. It goes without saying the pandemic has disrupted every single business that is operating in this region. In some cases, businesses have been busier than ever, and in other cases, they're struggling, and it looks like they're going to continue to struggle for the next little while. But it's our mission at PKD to work with our local stakeholders like the Innovation Cluster to take good care of our companies and employers in this region and help them support and strengthen their business so that they can become more competitive. And what I've learned is that knowledge is power, and it's important that our businesses are armed with as much knowledge and information to help them diversify, strengthen, and amplify their businesses. So as we move into stage 3 of recovery, when businesses are once again looking at what this stage means and how do I navigate this new normal, which was different than last month's new normal, and how do we prepare for the next new normal that's coming over the next few months. And so we just want to make sure that our Peterborough and Kawartha-based businesses are armed with the knowledge and insight to help them navigate this really treacherous territory. So I do want to thank the Innovation Cluster for creating these breakfasts and bringing in these great keynote speakers to help inform and advise our companies. More importantly, thank you to Christine for presenting today, and thank you to the business community for showing up and supporting all of these agencies that are working around the clock to try to provide this information to you. I know that you're trying to show up and strengthen your business, and I applaud you for that. So thank you. Turn it back over to Mike.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rhonda. So now we get to our guest speaker, which we're very, very excited. And of course, Christine is, I believe it's just over past 5 o'clock in the morning where Christine is. She's based out of Silicon Valley. So very early in the morning, but you look very bright and perky and very much awake. So that's good to hear. Thank goodness for coffee, I suspect. So Christine, I want to introduce Christine. She's a frequent speaker. She's been quoted in 5 books and has been awarded several industrial awards. Christine's published over 300 articles on strategy, customer experience, sales and marketing, including Forbes. She's also the author of Seller's Compass, a time-proven cross-industry methodology for operationalizing customer experience to deliver revenue growth, brand perseverance, and customer loyalty, preference, sorry. Christine is also the president of New Business Strategies, leading client services through leadership and operations. New Business Strategies has delivered on average 20 to 40% increases in revenue and ROI for over 100 B2B private and public companies in North America, Australia, and Europe, and has advised them on strategy, customer experience, transformation, and marketing. And today, we're very excited because Christine's going to be talking about the 6 megatrends that highlight the major differences between yesteryear and tomorrow. As the pandemic is a catalyst for changing how Canadian startups across ICT, clean tech, ag tech, med tech sectors operate, structure, and grow, Christine will be able to share how these startups and early stage growth companies and ecosystems can leverage these megatrends into marketing advantages on a global marketplace. So I'd like to welcome Christine to the floor. So welcome, Christine. Oh, Christine, you're still muted.
I got so excited I started talking. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I would definitely also like to thank the Innovation Cluster and the Peterborough and the Kawartha Lakes Economic Development for this invitation. Over this breakfast, if you could, I'm getting a message here. Okay, it says, I think, are we good now? We should be good. All the messages are gone. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so again, want to say thank you. I'm not sure if that was my original message was heard, but I do want to say very much thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real honor to be here. So over this breakfast, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has been this tipping point for a multitude of trends. And we're going to talk about 6 mega trends. What do they mean overall? What are some of the implications and the opportunities for entrepreneurs? And I'm going to try to make this as relevant as I can for the Kawartha Lakes area and for the Peterborough area, because that's kind of where we are. So if we can go to the next slide really quick. Thank you, Mike. I'm not going to belabor this slide. Mike did such a gracious introduction of us that I don't know what I could possibly add to this other than, what we started in customer experience many years ago was sort of the viewed by most companies as being, oh, well, that's really kind of nice. Yeah, okay, customer experience, yeah. What you're going to see when you look at these mega trends is that it has now moved to being so core to how we're actually going to compete going forward. And I'll talk a little bit later on about this move between the 4th industrial revolution, which we are in now, and the 5th industrial revolution, which is in essence what we were actually moving to and what this tipping point has actually really cemented and moving forward. So let's kind of dive in, because I have a ton of information and I want to leave time for questions. So if you have questions, put them in Q&A or put them in the bubble. And I'll get to them at the end as many as I can. So if we can go to the next slide. The pandemic is being referred to as a black swan event. And if you're a follower of Nassim Taleb, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not, he wrote a book called The Black Swan Theory. And the idea behind black swan theories is they've happened all the time. But what's unique is that these are highly disruptive events. They are considered to be unpredictable. They're considered to be out of the blue, like we've experienced. We've had an event in which we were blindsided. It disrupted normalcy to every extent possible. And so this has been considered a black swan event. Other black swan events are 9/11, the Great Recession of 2008. So this is not new. We've had these. What we haven't had is had this model to actually look at these events and try to understand them. What is interesting behind the black swan is that there's this characteristic that says when it's over, and even though it never really is over, but when it's over, people come back and say, oh, you know what? All the signs were there. We already knew it. We should have known that this was going to happen. And that's very much the case with COVID, right? The signs were all there. And for the 6 megatrends that I'm going to go through, the signs have all been there. It just needed a tipping point. And so COVID was this tipping point. So we're going to go through these 6 megatrends and kind of keep in mind that the idea of the black swan is it's highly disruptive. And in that disruption is opportunity. So we all say there's a silver lining inside of every cloud. In this particular case, today, there are many silver linings inside this very, very dark cloud. So let's jump in and if we can go to the next slide. The first mega trend is time is your competition. And so what's been really interesting if we look at the past, at least the past 20 years, right? It could even go before that, is that we became, in many parts of this world, this culture of busyness, right? And we have become, it's almost been this badge of honor. Oh, I'm so busy. I've got overscheduled children. I've got overscheduled life, and everything has become this hallmark of busyness. When we look at these past 20 years relative to past 200 plus years, what we find ourselves is that we are actually in an environment of tremendous abundance. We have, in most parts of the world, more than we could possibly want. What we don't have is time. And there has been this long movement towards finding better ways to save time. So it's everything from Grubhub, Instacart, eCart, at Loblaws, which is pretty popular these days. But all of these things in order to save time. It's Netflix. It's all the things where you're looking to save some time. What happened with COVID was we all wound up being stuck at home, and there has been this underlying trend which came out and became very clear that says, you know what, I'm now at home, I'm being reacquainted with my family, right? I'm being reacquainted and realizing that I've lost connection, or much of the population has lost connection with their communities, we call them tribes, with their industries, with their peers. And there's this rebalancing happening now within individuals. They're looking at what is it that, and this is as businesses as well as consumers, they're looking at, I really want to be able to put my time on really my purpose in life. I want to put my time where it really needs. And so what that means is that for brands, B2B or B2C, for brands, they need to find ways, and this is the opportunity to deliver faster. That could be everything from how do I, deliver groceries faster? How do I deliver, piping to an oil rig faster? How do I go do that faster? So the competition is around time. The caveat to that is it is not time at any cost or fast at any cost. It is at that same level of quality, of experience, and of consistency that was before. Right, so companies really are now focusing on how do I actually become creative and how do I deliver things faster. In order to kind of go do that, right, winning companies are saying, let me take a step back, let me understand what customers want to have delivered faster, and what is it that they define as fast. Is fast Amazon Prime, it's here tomorrow? Is fast that it's instant online when you register on an app and you want access to something, or is fast in 4 days? So part of the key is to go look and understand what is fast, how do they define fast, and what is slow. So we're in this economy where it's fast and slow. So, but you are going to compete on time without degradation of quality and customer experience. So the couple examples on fast, where we're starting to see it. You look at the application of drones and the use of drones in order to do pest detection in fields, right? So this notion of I can fly a drone over a field and I can use a high-res camera to actually photograph very rapidly all of these plants. I actually can very rapidly do disease detection when I upload these images into an AI, AI database with analytics, and then go out and figure out how I want to do a ratification. We're seeing other things when it relates to time on innovation around telehealth for pets. I know, don't laugh. It's actually a really burgeoning industry. And then, we're looking at Upwork, which is a great place for companies, large and small, to go find very specialized talent. Another way, but different on fast, is the use of virtual assistants, call them digital applications or digital agents, that are being used to engage patients with Alzheimer's in order to help them, work with their memory and to feel comfortable and safe. So there's a lot of innovation, but it is around time and it is around space. So what are the applications? What is the implication and the opportunities for, businesses? If you're not digital, you're behind the 8 ball. Right, so everything is digital, everything is online. So digital transformation is absolutely critical. what we're also going to see are new combo business models that says that, you're going to have ecosystems along the supply chain form that can actually deliver products faster. Because if you're going to deliver pipes, you might as well deliver something else that's going to that same oil rig, or that's going to, a farm field or to a public utility. So you're going to find these very interesting ecosystems. So look along your supply chain to say, who else can I partner with? The other that we're going to start to see is a rise of personalized services. I'm going to talk about that very shortly. And this work, health, life rebalancing. So look at fast, compete on fast, but look at it through the eyes of understanding the customer and creatively new ways of actually how you actually can go do that. So let's talk about the customer in the next slide. And it is, this is a shift that is so fundamental, that is in some ways it's fascinating and delightful to go see, right? So this is a picture from the Peterborough Farmers Market pre-COVID, because it really draws the point home. For the past, 40 years, we have been automating whatever we can. That is the more hallmark of the fourth industrial revolution. It's all about AI and IoT and automation and enterprise software. And we have so automated the processes of organizations that the distance between the customer and being able to talk to somebody that's actually in a company is now actually rather long. In many brands, you can't even talk to somebody within a company. So we have put technology at the forefront, right? We've gotten distracted by the shiny bubbles, and we put that to the customer. So we look at chatbots, great example. Chatbots, there's a real love-hate relationship with chatbots, whereas most people, regardless of generations, want to use a telephone to actually talk to a brand. So what's coming out of this, and what's actually started to happen, is that companies in COVID, when COVID hit, companies, and we've all gotten this, they've gotten an gotten an email that basically said, you did business with me like 6 years ago or 67 years ago, and I got your back, right? With the inability of actually being able to talk to somebody in a brand, right, has created massive backlash. And we're seeing that backlash actually come to fruition today as people, businesses, as well as consumers, remember this, remember this communication and this tone deaf communication, and remember the fact that they couldn't talk to the salesperson, or they couldn't talk to their customer service rep, or they couldn't talk to anybody at the company, are now voting with their dollars and saying, I want a relationship with the people that I do business with. And this is why this farmers market to me really draws home, because we are reverting back to this model. So technology, which was at the forefront, at chatbots, Facebook, social media, all of your automated systems, are going to now be diffused into the background as enabling technologies to enable the human, right? And in other cases will be automated in places in IoT between machines where they can actually relieve the human. What that means to businesses is that, one, use the technology to help deliver a better relationship. And secondly is understand what kind of a relationship that customers want to have with you, right? Reinstall your phone banks, answer the phone. If you have a chat bot, put in live chat. And yes, it's additional people, but you can take them from other areas, and that's actually a good thing, is having everyone in the company be exposed to doing customer service and working with the customers. So this pandemic made us realize how disconnected we are, and how technology has actually disconnected us from each other, and how we actually are now craving this social connection. So the paradigm shift that's happening is that instead of you doing everything automated and walking around like this constantly looking at our phones and not really paying attention, we're seeing a heightened opening of relationships. We're seeing, salespeople that want to be able to do the right thing and have relationships, and are looking, and for brands, that means look at the opportunity to connect your customers, right? We very rapidly went from in-person meetings to Zooms or, GoToMeetings or WebEx or whatever your platform you choose. And just as quickly, we went into Zinners, Zoom dinners, right? Zoom happy hours. We've moved to virtual cooking. We've moved to all sorts of things. The bottom line that's sitting underneath that is this social connectivity. And that is the mechanism going forward when you're looking at your commerce relationships. So commerce is going to be rooted, yes, in automation, but more importantly, in having that one-to-one connectivity and using technology to personalize or to empower marketing and to power sales and to power field maintenance in order to know more about that customer so that relationship actually is a binding one. It binds between the customer and that actual brand. And so this is a pretty major significant shift. As the pendulum starts to swing back in the other direction, and then it's going to completely change sales models. There's quite a bit of discussion about doing away with sales quotas because it doesn't instill this behavior of, I really want to have a deep personal relationship. It instills this, I need to close the deal, and it disconnects, right? And puts in this distance between the brand and the individual. So there is this not necessarily this full-on move back to brick and mortar stores. That's not necessarily what's going to happen. There will not necessarily be this full-on move back to doing, field sales and having, guys and gals around the country, walking in to pitch their services or pitch their products. But what you're going to see is a different level of depth and tone and communication between those sales individuals and that customer, and using data to actually enable that. So how does that actually change your business? Okay, this hashtag be human, this hashtag compassion, this hashtag empathy is the hallmark of the fifth industrial revolution. And what the fifth industrial revolution is about is saying, I'm going to take all that automation that we got so enamored with in the fourth industrial revolution, and I am now going to apply it into humanity. I'm going to bring it back into humanity, and I'm going to use it to serve humanity versus to enslave humanity. And we have already begun this fifth industrial revolution. The signs are everywhere if you know where to look. So how does this actually change your business? What are the opportunities? Look at a resurgence of communities, and again, we call them tribes, of people that are like you. They could be in your business, it could be in your community, it could be in your industry. So foster that, recreate that. You're going to have something called loyalty shock. They said because of maybe how COVID was handled, you're going to see churn. And it's going, again, the churn is being driven by this need to have this relationship and to have a much deeper relationship, and to brands that actually understand how to collect that information, and how to use intent and how to use AI and all these different things in order to empower that relationship. You're going to see the rise of the health and the caring economy. You're going to see the rise of a homebody economy. Believe me, it's a real thing. Where there are businesses that are around how do we actually have more care for individuals that need help. It could be mental illness, it could be all sorts of different things. So there's this rise in the caring economy, and there's the whole industries are cropping up around that. And same thing with the homebody, because we're all homebodies right now. There's a whole industry cropping up around that. So that is part of this connectedness and these authentic relationships. So if you remember anything from what I'm talking about, it is about make sure your relationships are deep and they are personal, right? And yeah, it takes time, but it will pay off in spades down the road, and build your tribes and build your communities. Well, how do you go do that, right? Because you can't do it in the structure that we have today. So that leads us to the next megatrend in the next slide that says we have to organize around the customer. Now, you would say, well, okay, that's a business organization, or that's our hierarchical org structure. No, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. What we're talking about here is saying if we have the customer in the center, and we're going to have an authentic relationship with that particular customer, and it is true, right? Because we're coming from the heart. This is all about the heart and the head. Then what we deliver to that customer needs to be different, right? And you're going to see it manifest in ways that says, instead of having my running joke going to the grocery store, or like and we won't name any grocery stores, is you walk in, you want a tube of toothpaste, right? And you have 47 brands of toothpaste. Well, I just want a tube of toothpaste. And so that standardization, this mass standardization of having, okay, 47 brands of toothpaste, is going to swing in a direction that says, okay, the analogy doesn't work for toothpaste, but it does work for vitamins, and it does work for heavy equipment. That says we're going to have a set of core models that you can choose from, right? So you could have a chassis from a heavy piece of equipment. Instead of saying, instead of in the old model that says, would you like your combine to be yellow or green, right? We're now going to say we have a chassis, and there's a plethora of options that you can choose in order to augment and multi-purpose that particular chassis. So it could have everything in there, from something that bales hay to something that plows, that does, I'm not a farmer, as anybody on the call is going to figure that out really quick. But the idea is that we're going to offer opportunities for mass customization. So it's mass personalization. So in order to meet micro niches. So we're moving into a marketplace and into an economy where you're going to find that you're going to have massive micro niches. And in order for companies to be able to serve micro niches at the business and at the consumer level, is that you need to be able to deliver mass customization of that product, of that service. And you only can do that by having a core model, right, or core models, and then having with your ecosystem partners, which is another core theme of this, is to be able to bring multiple pieces to configure this particular asset in a way that meets not just one need of that particular customer, but multiple needs of that particular customer. So you're going to start to see that. You're going to start to see that rise. That's going to create a whole new business model. It has phenomenal impacts on the supply chain, has phenomenal impacts on how we do manufacturing and how we actually do assembly, because the rules are completely different. So the key is to look at those customers and look again, they want an authentic relationship. You're competing on time. How do you do that? The only way you can actually go and do that is say, I am going to be able to allow that customer to configure something that is exactly for them, right? But I'm configuring it from a multitude of standard parts that come from me, that come from you, that come from somebody else, right? That will foster a whole rise of industries that specialize in nothing more in helping customers navigate this mass customization trend, right? How do you figure out, what pieces that I'm going to put together in order to achieve this outcome, in order to achieve this return? So that's a huge service industry that's coming. You'll see a lot of it digitally online with, advanced configuration software. You're going to see it a split between what I actually manufacture in a plant, what I 3D print out in the field, what gets configured, what doesn't get configured. And to kind of give you an example, it changes the whole world. If we look at, there's a new building going up, I think it's in Singapore, of which it's going to be the tallest apartment building or high rise or 2 towers in the world. They are all being pre-configured to the owner's specs in Indonesia. Now, how they're going to put that together, I'm not really sure, but it's a completely different way of building, right? It's not really what we thought about when we all looked at constructing our cottage, on the lakes. It doesn't come that way. Well, that's where we're going. So what does that actually mean, right, for you? What does that actually mean in terms of opportunities and implications? The one thing that I want to stress is that you have to plan for continuous change, right? In that the world that we're in now, we're never going back to what it was. That's gone, right? We are in what a friend of mine, Chris Shipley, affectionately calls as the now normal. And I think to the earlier point from the Peterborough economic development was, yes, we're in the now normal, because what's normal today is not going to be normal tomorrow. So we have to plan for this continuous change. And it's not it's in traditional business planning, but it's more in listening to what's different, listening to how people are responding to different types of things. Look at your micro niche markets. It's going to be multitudes of those micro niche markets that you're going to go serve. And they don't necessarily need to be in your backyard. They could be all the way on the other side of the world. So look at those micro niche markets. Look at personalized services, truly, truly personalized services that are unique to that particular customer, but there's a basis underneath which where you can assemble the parts to deliver that, and also helping customers to actually do that configuration and understand how they can reap more value, again, faster. And then I think the other thing that you're going to see is and this is a phenomenal opportunity, especially in the innovation community, is this rise of these global ecosystems. I mean, we have ecosystems today that are either industry-based or ecosystems that are regionally based. Think about that turned on a completely different dimension when you're going to say, I'm looking at distribution ecosystems of unlike companies like myself that are serving the same customer, right? So look at those ecosystems and you're going to find new opportunities because you're not focused on really on the vertical, on the stack of your industry. You're really focusing on really what is around that customer and who is it that they do business with and where can you actually, step into that ecosystem. And with that, you're going to see rises of different economies. We're all looking at China right now, and there's a lot of discussion about China has been on the rise for a while. Yeah, okay, maybe. And I'm quite sure they will be. But what I'm looking at, if I'm looking at 50 years down the road or looking at 60 years down the road, I'm looking at Africa. Now, Africa is the emerging market. There is a lot of focus being done on Africa. And so if you're saying, where do I want to get a foothold and where do I want to find a new market? Look at Africa. And in line with that, the other thing that it will become heightened is cybersecurity. The game has completely changed in cyber. So because we're out now all digital, we are now all fast. There is a multitude of information out there. You really need to block down your cyber assets because they are more valuable than your brick and mortar assets. So I know you've heard this being beaten to death. But it's true. It's really true. So now that we're looking at fast delivery of services and products, we're looking at authentic relationships, we're looking at highly personalized products, for businesses as well as consumers, and how to actually deliver that through these diverse ecosystems. We need a different organization, right? So if we look at that next trend in that next slide, what we're seeing is the rise of what we call the vigilant organization driven by purpose. And let me define a vigilant organization, right? So if you're very interested, the person to follow for this is George Day. And he has a great way of netting it out on vigilant organizations. They're long-term, they have an outside-in perspective, they are learning organizations, they use strategic account information and they're fluid on information. Information fluidly flows within the organization and across their ecosystem and across their value chain. That is almost 100% reverse of the organizations today. So most organizations today are short-term oriented. What's my quarterly earnings per share? What's my guidance to the street? What's my quota? When am I going to make? What's next month's numbers? Am I going to make them? Most organizations today are inside out. I believe this. I think this. Versus outside in. What does the market say? What does the customer say? We all tend to be budget driven, and I think we all know that right now as we're trying to figure out how to continue to make payroll, right? So we go from budget driven. In a vigilant organization, it's a learning organization. We learn, we incorporate those learnings, right? Today, most organizations, especially large ones, are siloed. Silos slow organizations down. They generate politics. And so the idea of a vigilant organization is that it really is about strategic accountability, right? Let's focus on the outcome. Let's focus on what we need to achieve. So the wrinkle in this and why I picked Labatt's, I hope I'm saying that right, Labatt's is that they are a showcase for not just the vigilant side of the structure, but also for the wrinkle that's come into the equation, which has to do with purpose, right? We have talked about triple bottom line, the UN sustainability goals for a really, really long time. It has been brewing And with COVID has now been this shift that says companies are going to be measured not just on what products they perform and the quality of those products and the value that's delivered, but also what is their care for the environment. This is the purpose part. You're not going to, you can't handle all 17 UN SDGs, right? And Labatt's is a great example. And they said, you know, we're going to pick on a couple of things. And we're going to really focus on that being our core purpose in addition to providing great beer. For the average company that's out there, this is meaningful, and why you need to embrace this, because consumers and businesses now are looking at what is your footprint? What is your sustainability footprint? What is your carbon footprint? Are you reporting it? You know, how transparent are you? And they're making buying decisions in accordance to that. We see a lot of evidence of that in the consumer world. In the business to business world, it's maybe not so evident, but it's becoming very, very clear. When we look at procurement or we look at sourcing of indirect goods, there is a huge rise happening within companies to say, I actually want to see what the rating is. You know, if you look at part of EcoVadis, I want to see what the rating is of that particular vendor. And it's not just of that vendor, it's of all the vendors in their supply chain. Mercedes-Benz is a great example. They're actually using blockchain to actually enforce reporting of sustainability targets. What is your target? Did you meet your target down that supply chain? And if you don't report or you don't meet the target, guess what? You're out, right? Which requires a degree of redundancy built into your vendor profiles. So buyers are looking at how green you are. Now, here's the interesting thing that's going to happen. And the rise, the movement is there. It's just, again, it's not making news. Is that corporate social responsibility really is very important, not just for the Gen Z and the millennials as buyers, but there is a movement now to make reporting and transparency of reporting to be part of your quarterly, if you're a public company, be part of your quarterly filings. So it's not a nice to have, it will become a must have. So that means that now is when companies need to be really clear, what is it that I'm doing? You know, what is it that I actually really care about? And what is it that my customers care about, so I can actually align, you know, what my purpose is to their purpose, because it builds brand loyalty, it builds connectivity. Around, we talked about authentic, you know, relationships. It brings that community together. You have something in common. You can again bind yourself to your customers because you're all working towards a common goal. What you're going to see in this is not just the regulations, but you're also going to see, and we're seeing it already this year, is a downshift in consumerization, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Yes, you know, it's resulting in lots of old brands, brick and mortar brands in the retail industry, you know, declaring bankruptcy, but it's not a surprise. This has been brewing for a while. What we're seeing is the uptick of brands such as Real, ThredUp. This is recycling of you know, gently used, you know, as they say, gently used, you know, clothing. So it's a fascinating opportunity to say that we have had this tectonic fundamental shift that's gone from, I need to have more, right? You know, label, to now being, I really want to be green in the environment because companies are starting to realize there is literally, and this is actually true, a finite amount of clean water on this planet. So, you know, so we have to do that. So if I'm going to go to the next slide is, we're going to look at agility and speed. The core of agility and speed in this particular mega trend is that in order to deliver fast, in order to deliver these relationships, you need to have agility as an organization. And that requires a different organizational structure. Where we have historically said, well, we're going to flatten the organization, we're going to go to matrixed, we're going to go to all these different things. In essence, that doesn't build speed. It still reinforces the silos, and we still have implemented so much technology. So the output of where we are today is all that technology, from your ERP system to your CRM system to, you know, all these different field maintenance systems to your social media systems, you know, have actually institutionalized rigidity inside of organizations. So to break that rigidity, you're going to have to break that organization structure. And where companies are moving towards is saying, I am now going to set up cross-functional teams, 6 to maybe 8 or 10 people in the team, sales, engineering, service, quality, marketing, and I'm going to have them wrap around a major customer, a global account. I'm going to have them wrap around a micro niche, and empowering them to make decisions, right? Because it's the frontline staff that understands what's going on. So how do you actually keep all of these teams lined up? You keep them lined up by actually tying their performance to the goals and objectives of the business. Objectives are measurable and time bound, and it's that alignment between each team and the golden objectives, and the teams stay aligned this way through SLAs, service level agreements between the teams. I know it sounds complicated. It actually isn't, and it works. So what you'll find is your organization is much more agile to changed environments. So what does that actually mean to you? It means that when you need to really, really, really let go of that sacred cow of the organization chart and look at empowering your teams. Let go of the definition of employees, right? That notion that you're owned by somebody from 9 to 5 is gone, right? And you have to really revamp that definition of an employee. You're going to see homogenization between urban and rural. I mean, we're seeing this already in the Coeur d'Alene system, where the Toronto folks are moving out and wanting to buy their cottages in order to escape the city. This is going to completely change how work is done and how organizations operate. And it's a huge opportunity for the Peterborough area. And we're going to look at revamping technology in order to make it a lot more useful. So I'm going to go through one more megatrend, the last one, and then we're going to go to Q&A. And so this last one, if we can go to the next slide, has to do with proximity to demand, right? We've all seen global supply chains massively disrupted. I don't know how it is in the Peterborough and Cortland Lakes area. I hope it's better than where it is in California, where we still have empty grocery shelves. Go figure that one out. But this is a function of what's happening. We have taken out of these global supply chains because we have outsourced manufacturing to China and to other parts of the world. We have taken the fat out. There's no fat in the supply chains, and so we have massive disruption, and we have no ability to compensate for that. This is triggering a rise in insourcing and a rise in a completely new model that says, I am now going to put manufacturing next to demand, right? And it could be, in the case of this picture, this happens to be a bunch of 3D printers, but it could be everything from having a household 3D printer. It could be everything from completely disrupting what a hardware store looks like, because I don't need to do that. I can do it with 3D printing. It could be a mini manufacturing plant, like a pop-up that pops up next to a particular construction environment or next to a particular project, and it gets torn down and moved away. So the idea is to completely rethink about how I'm actually going to do supply chains. Think about also local and neighborhood chains and supplies, delivering supplies to those particular business customers and making that much more mobile. Also look at your distribution ecosystems. You're not going to be distributing it. And yes, you might use truckers to distribute your products to warehouses, but look at it again in looking at different industries that are serving that same customer. So the opportunity here is, if we're moving into massively personalized products to meet unique needs of those customers, to deepen that relationship in order to give them what they want fast, right? We have to completely rethink how we're actually going to do manufacturing, and we're going to have to rethink about how we actually construct supply chains and where they are relative to the raw material and really where they are relative to the end customer. So very quickly, I'm going to the next slide. I've covered a lot of these implications and opportunities. I literally had like about 10 pages of them, and I thought, okay, I need to drill this down. I'm not going to talk to each one of them because you guys can look at the slides afterwards, but this is a net of some of the stuff that I've talked about, and I would like to move into Q&A because I don't want to short shift anybody that's got questions that might want to kind of delve into it. I'm happy to delve into any one of these. Right. So with that, any questions?
Excellent. So I think, first of all, thank you very much, Christine. You've done an excellent job, and I think it's made a lot of us think for sure. We have the Q&A function that's built into this version of the webinar. So I just like everyone to, if you have questions, obviously, to start entering your questions into the Q&A function. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen as well. So the first question is, do you have any suggestions to lock down cybersecurity assets?
Yeah, there is a lot of movement that's happening in cybersecurity. And one of the things that's interesting, and actually this came out of Australia, of all things, and in partnership with DARPA, which is a US defense agency, is re-looking at how software is actually developed, right? So if you're in the software business, you really, and then I'll go into more normal, more mainstream business. If you're in the software business, I mean, the key is to basically say, how do we actually develop code that we know is hack-proof by making sure that it is, it meets certain algorithmic tests. If anybody's interested in this, you know, I can send you some information on it that explains it a lot better. But key is we have to revisit and really develop code differently in order to prevent it from systems being hacked. And the reason that's important is if you look at autonomous vehicles, the easiest route to hack and gain control of an autonomous vehicle that isn't yours is through the entertainment system, right? So separating these units and isolating them and controlling them so that the code actually can't be hacked. In more mainstream businesses, when you're looking at your digital assets, you know, there is this movement that basically says one is when it's not just about having, you know, security, you want to have deep, you know, you want to use neural networks or deep learning to actually detect threats. So there's a company out of Israel, which I highly recommend. They're a client of ours called Deep Instincts. They use neural networks, which is how we as people, our brains work, to actually be able to detect a threat as it is developing and be able to shut it down, versus the old way, which is being algorithmic, meaning that I've detected the threat and I'm now going to pull in a barrier. The other is if you're in a highly sensitive environment, isolate your systems, meaning disconnect your internal systems from your external systems in order to isolate that threat. So there's the number of things to do. I know it's expensive, but you know, hire a security firm to do threat analysis, to engage in attacks, right? They pen attacks. So this is typically called white hat. They're going to do white hat and black hat testing, just to see where your vulnerabilities are. Because the more we have out there in the environment, and the more we open to have authentic relationships, the more the bad guys get invited in. And then, you know, and then is when you're looking at IoT, if you're looking at having one machine talk to the other machine, IoT right now, one of your primary criteria when you look at your chip providers for the IoT is look at how they're handling security. That's probably the most vulnerable areas right now is IoT, because if security isn't designed in from the get-go, you've got a problem. So hopefully that helps. If anybody wants the article on how to redo code, let Mike know and I will send it to him and he can send it out.
Thanks, Christine. Also, just a quick shout out, of course, Graham Berry is one of our clients with Nat Mechanics, but also is a cybersecurity expert and does quite a bit of work with cybersecurity. So if you are interested, send me a message as well, and we'd be happy to connect you to Graham Berry if you don't know who he is as well. So Christine, second question. First of all, it was an amazing overview of trends from Sarah. Sarah said that. Would you like you to speak to any trends you see with related to inclusiveness, diversity, and equity, and how they'll be transformative, and how we're going to achieve these objectives as we go forward in these megatrends?
Wow, that is a great subject. You know, this notion about, or not this notion about, this movement, I should say, about inclusion, diversity, and equity has been brewing for a long time. And we are at the 200th anniversary of this women's suffrage movement. I think it's actually this month, if I'm not mistaken. It takes time. I think the pendulum, the interesting thing with COVID is the pendulum is now has flipped the switch to say we are in an environment in which, or we're moving into an environment in which skills are paramount compared to, I want to work with people that look like me or act like me, right? So it is opening the door to saying, let's look at skill competencies in a multi-engagement model, employee, part-time, gig worker, what contractor, and have the skills actually drive that decision versus, versus the way it's been historically. In the United States, again, I can't speak to Canada. Canada seems to be a lot further ahead on inclusion and diversity than the United States is. In the United States, there are a number of legislative bills at the state level. California was the first that has mandated a quota for women on boards, and it has been a firestorm. Not only because these companies are being shamed if they don't do that, thanks to social media, but also because companies are starting to realize that if women are involved, and if women of color or of various sexual orientations are involved, it actually winds up being better for the company, for their profitability, for their performance, and for their culture. So the data has been there. It's been there for years. We're just starting to pay attention to it. So I do think it is, for these objectives, it is fundamental, because when we look at innovation, and like the women's program that the cluster is doing, what we're finding is that it is coming, and the pipelines are there. The innovation is coming from women and coming from people of different sexual orientations and from people of color. And the funding pipelines are starting to build that are focused on promoting that. So we're early, but it is part and part of our new humanity of this new industrial revolution.
Excellent, thank you. An excellent answer for sure. This question is from the Peterborough Angels. We recently noticed a trend of change of local industry in the field of semiconductors, such as US building some of their own semiconductors within their borders rather than importing. Do you know of any other tech fields that we'll be seeing the same thing similar?
Wow, I would venture to say it's just going to be across the board. Okay, that's not the answer you were looking for. But I think it's not just with semiconductors. I think it's everything from a regrouping also just in software. The enterprise software market is going through a massive consolidation, and new companies are rising. The original model that's been in place of well, we're going to have the core office here and the core engineers wherever here is, and I'm going to ship the code off to Kiev, or I'm going to ship it off to China or India for it to be worked on. That is starting, at least within the US, because of our interesting immigration laws, that is starting to be pulled back, right? We're seeing, I think in all countries, this movement towards nationalism, which is in some cases good, in many cases it's bad, but we're seeing software development, core software development coming here. So instead of it being outsourced to the Ukraine or to Kiev or to other parts of the world, it's going to Raleigh, North Carolina, or it's going to Provo, Utah, or believe it or not, it's going to Des Moines, Iowa. So you're seeing more of this insourcing. On the manufacturing level, we're seeing a lot of discussion that says devices that were used to be sent to China to be manufactured, like Apple devices, are now being brought back to be manufactured here in the US. So there is a retrenchment for nationalism. I would say look at almost any industry, you will see it there. The challenge again is it's great in the economy. We need to balance that line between what makes sense for us globally, politically and economically.
That makes a lot of sense. So next question is from Jane Darling. So for technology B2B companies that are delivering only an online service to business customers, the brand has a limited exposure to its customers. Mm-hmm. What are the approaches to increasing exposure in order to engage without distracting or interrupting?
Yeah, so, this is such a great question because there's just so much going on here. I mean, oh my gosh. So one of the things that is coming, okay, it's coming and it started, is if you're an online and you're serving business customers, right? The route to most of these customers or these prospects was email, right? And we all get, droves and droves and droves. There's like, I don't know how many billions of emails that are being sent every day. Companies, at least the companies that we're working with, are saying, I'm kind of done with email, right? I think we're all kind of done with email, and they're moving to Slack and Teams. And the movement is to cleave off communications with the external world from communications in the internal world, and to basically throttle that external communication. So if you're doing business with a B2B customer and you're an employee, I'm going to pick on Slack. You're on Slack. If you're a vendor or you're a contractor or you're a service provider, you will be brought into that Slack channel. You cannot market to Slack, right? This is the intent of Slack and Teams, is to do that. So what happens, and in this world, right? How do we now engage this prospect, and especially when so much of it is digital? So there's, and again, it's early, right? We all went from in-person events to webinars, right? Everybody's exhausted. We all have death by webinar. And now people are moving towards micro-learning instances. How do I now teach? So that seems to be resonating, and it'll probably continue to resonate for the next, 6 to 12 months, where it is, let me teach you a new skill. Let me teach you how to use this product. Let me teach you how to solve this problem. Let me teach you how to get these results. Let me teach you. So these are micro-learning, highly interactive micro-learning elements. You're seeing a lot of AR or XR, AR, VR being used in that. You're seeing, lots of technology. The other thing that's also happening, and to your point, is that we used to have trade shows, right? And you'd have your booth or your stand, and you would go do your thing. That's now being moved into the virtual world, and there's a rise of new vendors, but the model is very different. The model is, you're going to have the ability to have chat. You're going to be able to see who's talking, and the networking, which is why everybody goes to these conferences and events anyway, is going to be facilitated through games, right? Through actually pulling people into games. So there's a company called Go Game. So it's thegogame.com. Actually, is a digital platform. They went from the physical world to the digital world, and it is just for giggles, you got to sign up for a demo because it's absolutely amazing. So the key is, how do I actually socially connect prospects? They want to network with their peers. They want to network with industry thought leaders. They want to meet people. So that's the need, that when you look at how to actually drive exposure, that you need to talk to. That's what you need, that you should deliver. And with the notion about, again, I'm learning, I'm teaching, I'm connecting, it'll work. But the model is still in evolution. Marketers are, on the B2B side, are grappling with the fact that, ABM and all these other principles that we all thought was, going to solve world hunger is being thrown out the window. It doesn't work, especially in light of the fact that, this Slack Teams thing is happening.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Christine, for that. Next, we have 3 more questions, and we'll keep it at the last 3. So the next question is very much about our local market. So in reference to your comments about answering phones in local market, do you have any guidance for the hours to cover? Any kind of realistic coverage for phones? Should it be, 6 times between 6 and 12 days a week, 7, 24? Like, how should you handle it in your local market?
Yeah, and that's really a good question, because not everybody should have 7 by 24, right? Not everybody can afford to follow the sun model. That what I would suggest at the local level is ask your customers, have a little poll, send them a survey and say, when do you want them? When do you want to have the phone access? And scooch a couple hours on the front end, and scooch a couple hours on the back end. When the phones are not manned, right, then what is it that you're going to have in place of that, right? It could be, yes, a chatbot, right? Or it could be a live chat that you've outsourced, which could be a totally other new business who's doing, who's providing outsourced live chat, in the Peterborough, Fort, the Lakes area. So key is ask your customers, because they will tell you when they will actually, want to access, want to talk to you live. So that way you're not putting in something that is, overkill for really what their expectations are.
Excellent. The next one, actually, I think you kind of answered already, which was just, have you been seeing examples of movement to nearshoring, which I think you answered very, very well. So I think we'll go to our very last question from Charlie Mendez. So first of all, he's very appreciative and thank you for your presentation this morning. It's been very thought provocative. His question is, how do you think customers in the economy are going to make the shift from unrewarding but addictive experiences that leave people feeling isolated, like surfing the net on your phone, to more relational experiences that provide that one-to-one connection?
You know, it's going to take time. I think that's, there's a couple of things that to kind of keep in mind. In McKinsey has done quite a bit of work in this area, and actually very good work that says in economic downturns is when the next big companies are born, right? The baby, they're born. So, in this downturn, right, will be the next OpenText, will be the next RIM, will be the next, Nortel, of big companies that'll rise. And with it is going to be this is looking at how do we actually make this shift and make this transition. I don't have an answer for that for your direct question, because it's changing. The key is breaking that connection between, as you aptly called it, this addiction, right? There have been a number of studies done on what happens to children and to teenagers that are addicted to the phone, right? They lose their interpersonal skills. They are unable to deal with social situations because you can yell at Siri all you want and she's still very nice to you. So I think part of looking at this transition is saying, how do we actually have that experiential experience, right? How do we make an encounter of online be experiential? It doesn't need to necessarily be with VR goggles. There is a lot of technology out there that incorporates augmented reality actually on a device where you can, and I'm not talking about games here, so let's take games out of the equation, but where you actually can engage with people and have it actually be an experience and make it richer. The key is the richness, right? So people are craving experiences, hence the Go game, right? So they're craving that experience. And so you're sort of trying to figure out, how do I take that experience and that connectivity and enable that connectivity? And then how do I get people to connect after that? The biggest challenge is people will talk and chat with each other when they're in an event, right? Or in a platform, but getting them to move off of that and take that communication beyond the event offline, that right now is the hurdle that people have not figured out. And part of it is that we as humans need to learn different behaviors. So if you come up with something, great startup, because companies are grappling with how to take it outside of that environment to make it sticky.
Well, Christine, on behalf of the Innovation Cluster and everybody that connected, first of all, thank you very much. For those of you that may have dialed in late or something to that effect, or maybe the presentation was so great you hadn't had time to take notes, this was recorded, and so we'll be posting it as well. If you want to check out Christine's website, it's www.newbiz, so NEWBIZS.com, and obviously Christine's contact information there as well. So Christine, once again, thank you very, very much. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Of course, anybody who wants to be an Innovation Cluster client, we have a brand new website, so please check out the website. So www.innovationcluster.ca. There's an apply button at the top. That's the same apply button you can use for applying as a regular client, but also with the Women Breaking Barriers initiative as well. Applications are open right now, and we're obviously taking them as well. So I'd just like to say, on behalf, once again, the Innovation Cluster, thank you very much for dialing in, and we very much appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thank you.